The following is intended only for mature audiences. Always consult legal and medical professionals when needed. Viewer discretion is advised.
From a an energetic standpoint, anything physical in the body that sets up as an illness stems from an energetic perspective to begin with. So how are these things impacting our chakras? How is it internalizing?
I guess we'll call it the awakening time where they're more aware. Oh my gosh, I can tell my dog, my cat's acting funny, or I'm feeling like I'm being watched. Mm-hmm. And they're more aware than they are most of the time. I mean, it's like...
Right? A lot of them, for me, I had a little girl come to me. I was at church, and that was the first really...
And all of a sudden, within a couple of days' time, somebody's either lost their job or somebody's car broke down. You know, these are the accidental sides of manifesting.
Stories happen to people, and they take it on themselves. They take it on their shoulders. They take it on their heart. And, a lot of this stuff challenges them and their beliefs about themselves, about it limits who they can be.
I like to look at their charts before I do healing session with them. And if we can get their chart, we can really pinpoint, a lot of these are past life things coming forward.
What it is we have a conversation with that spirit and we let them know why we're there. We also...
but as far as the negative aspects, it can really lower your mood and, it can completely depress you. And I've seen that with a lot of people.
Because it was a shock for me, I expanded my knowledge and I stepped into energy healing, and then I went into shamanism. So in working with my guides...
Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Terra Turas. My name is Michael. This evening, we have we started doing live readings for people while we are online, so to speak. And this evening, the people that are on our panel are myself. In the upper left-hand corner, you'll also see Melody Loving. And down underneath her is Mr. Malcolm Spears. And this evening, our guest is Michelle. Michelle, how are you this evening?
Hi, good, thank you.
Michelle, if you would.
Happy to be here.
I appreciate you taking the time to be here. Tell us a little bit about yourself, if you would.
I am a grandmother raising 3 grandchildren, and I'm a retired teacher. I retired after 17 years. And my oldest grandchild is gifted, and my youngest child is gifted. I know that got confusing. I have a 17-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old granddaughter. And they're both gifted ladies.
Now, curiosity, did they grow up gifted, as in, did they display that kind of gift from an early age, or was it something that came on a little bit later in life?
No, they both displayed as very young. My daughter used to play with her grandmother, who passed away 19 years before she was born.
Wow.
All right. She would, nanny this and nanny that, and she would have had no way to know that the children did call her grandmother Nanny.
Wow. See, now that's one thing that I know that a lot of people will experience as they go along. Their children, their grandchildren, it becomes more of a hereditary kind of thing, especially when both parents have been gifted or display gifts and inclinations and things like that. Well, this evening...
Mariah's parents are definitely not gifted.
Really?
No.
Did it skip a generation?
I think I'm intuitive, but I'm not gifted. I'm not psychic in any way.
Oh, I beg to differ.
Malcolm said before you had called in this evening, Malcolm had said that he's got a couple of things that he wanted to talk to you about. So we're going to get to those
Okay.
here in a couple of minutes. But for the people that are tuning in and watching, or anybody that's going to be listening to a podcast later on, what we're doing this evening is Michelle has agreed she's got anywhere between 4 and 6 questions that she's going to ask, and we're going to go kind of round robin around the people that are here on the show and be able to give her a reading and trying to help her with some insights, information, or things that come across. So, Michelle, what I'm going to do is ask you, if you will, what is your first question?
My topic this evening is psychic children. And what sort of things can parents do to encourage your children's path without leading?
Without leading them down a pathway one way or another. Okay.
Or another, right.
Melody, I'm going to go with you for the very first one here. How might she be able to help do that?
Good question. Listening and honoring what they say, and helping with developing it. Okay, maybe developing is not the right word, but being comfortable with it is extremely important, and that it's good. It's a very good thing. It is a gift and something special. That definitely not everybody has. It would also be good for them to understand that not everybody understands things like they do or sees and hears things like they do either. And yet it's okay because they're different. It's a good different. Does that make sense?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So them being who they are is the biggest important thing. For them to do that, and you allow it, and also maybe ask them sometimes what would they like to try. I have grand twins that are now 14, and a few years back they wanted me to show them how to see auras. It's just something for that moment. They wanted to see auras, so we did a little experiment. It was pretty cool.
Were you able to help them, Melody, to see auras? Were you able to help them see the auras?
Yeah, from something I had attended a class years before, and the way the teacher did that, and they were so cool. And then I was asking them questions, and because they'll feed off each other, well, because they're twins, I'd ask them a question, but I made them write it down, not to say anything, so that they would, or what colors they saw. Oh, that was part of the aura experiment was for them to write down what they saw each time. And so that they couldn't feed off each other, mainly because there was 2 of them at the same time. But doing games like that they get to actually say, wow, this is really cool. Yes, I got that. And so that's fun for them. So that's it for now.
That's okay. Malcolm, I know that you've worked with younger people in quite a few things. What would you tell Michelle as far as going through and being able to help work on some of this?
Well, I liked what Melody was saying about honoring it and being non-judgmental and asking open-ended questions about how deep their experience is and how they feel about things. So you can probe a little bit without leading much. So just go in with what they're telling you and ask them to clarify things. And a good question also, not only what they see or hear, but it's what they feel. Because oftentimes people are, I can't even think of the word of it, clairsentient, and they just feel or know things without really having any idea that it's not them. So it's questioning and honoring. And I think that, taking the kids to spiritual camps really gives them a very, very good exposure to some of the possibilities, and to know that other people do it, and that it's normal, but also to understand who to talk to and who not to talk to.
Explain that a little bit, if you would.
That's right.
Me or Malcolm?
Malcolm, explain what you mean by talking to the right people or the wrong people.
Well, there's people. Some people have a lot of fear or a lot of judgment. Sometimes it's religious based. Sometimes it's personally based. And some people will just get very upset. So it's the things to start figuring out is, who's judgmental and who's not really. It's when they're younger. At a certain point in adolescence, they start to figure that stuff out pretty well. But my mom was really, really psychic, but she got into it more because I got into it, and she kind of followed me. My sister is probably more psychic than I am, but she got so badly spooked at a young age. She wants nothing whatsoever to do with it. And it's kind of cute because I live in duplexes, one flat on top of another. My mom used to live upstairs, and when my mom was still traveling, my sister would come take care of the cat or the dog or the plants or whatever it was at the time. And she used to open the front door and she used to call up the stairs and say, "Betty's not here. I don't want to see you. Leave me alone." And then she would go in because she knew the house was full of spirits. And that's what she would do before going into my mom's apartment by herself. Wow. If there was somebody else there, she didn't mind so much. But so
yes, Mariah is 12 now. Mm-hmm. But when she was younger, we did have to tell her, you don't go to school and tell the guidance counselor that you talk to dead people, because that could lead. Some things we just don't go to school about. And we explained that to her, that, some people are just not as accepting as others, and that would not be a good thing to discuss at school.
It's not a normal for everybody.
No.
Right.
No, it definitely is not. In my experience, in having grown up with this since I was 5, it's a little bit different for me. But again, because I also had children and they grew up gifted, my own experience from growing up and being more indoctrinated in the church, I tried to keep an open mind. Back then, late 60s, 70s, early 80s, you didn't talk about this stuff to anybody. Even family members would, shy away from the topic. It has thankfully become a little bit more open to this point. But when my kids were growing up, like Melody, everybody says you don't go running around talking about this to just everybody because it will cause a problem. However, at the same time, it's important to go ahead and recognize it. When they're saying, I heard this. Okay, what did you hear? And as Malcolm said, if they're telling you that they feel odd, what feeling do you have? But I would also point out, from my own perspective, when asking, what do you feel? Is it a feeling that belongs to you, or does it feel like it belongs to something else or someone else? Trying to help them differentiate between their own inner light, if you will, and those that might be around or whoever's trying to come in and speak to them. Mm-hmm. The hardest part for me was the theological background, trying to reconcile the two. For my children, it was easier because I had found different ways to be able to talk to them and say, here's what biblical things are, and here's what, I believe, and you're going to have to make up your own mind as you walk along. But if they're showing signs, capabilities for clairvoyance or clairsentience, being able to see things, being able to hear things, when you're out and about, and it sounds crazy, if you're driving by a graveyard, pull over, stop for a minute and say, is there something there that you may see or you may not? Again, without feeding into it, it's difficult. But trying to keep everything flowing all the time is important. Does that make sense?
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Making sure that they feel okay about saying something, or they see something, feel something, they heard something, or did you notice that, or something like that too. And when they see people or like dark figures or something, that because it's dark doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, but you ask them, like, how did you feel? I mean, seriously, not just that you saw it and it spooked you. but how did you feel about it? So the feeling is extremely important.
Wholeheartedly, I would agree. Well, Michelle, if you will, go ahead.
Yes. Well, I love the games that she was talking about. We had a shop here, Divine Awakenings, Jared Walters, and we had Michelle Bellinger here from Cleveland, Ohio, and she did psychic games one night, and so we went. And I think that's really how we figured out the girls, where they were, what specialty they have. And Mariah's a wonderful young lady, but she's very blunt. She's very dry. And sometimes that's not a good thing. But she's very, very, very good at blind man's bluff. If you give her something of someone's and blindfold her, she can find the person.
Oh, wow.
Where like the cards, holding a card in your hand and knowing what the picture is on the other side, she's not good at that at all. Therefore, she doesn't want to do it. She only likes to do what she's good at. She likes to go to cemeteries, and she can tell you who's there and how they died.
Wow.
But in traffic, she doesn't like to be near cemeteries because the chatter is too much.
I'm going to ask Melody and Malcolm. Would you say that this child or young one is gearing more towards being more of a medium?
There is definitely there's gifts for sure. There's no question. There's a really, really strong divine connection. She must be stubborn as hell.
Yeah.
Because she's a natural leader and she's going to do things the way she sees fit. She's got a very, very strong healing gift here. And, the psychic stuff, I think, kind of comes along with the energy that she carries. But it's try her with some psychometry, actually putting her hands on things like people's jewelry or whatever. So it's an interesting thing to look at. And Michelle, a little bit earlier, you had talked about not having any gifts. And I think you're overlooking a couple of things here. I know that your life has not been easy and you've had to sacrifice a lot in your life. But you are a very, very, very powerful healer. And it is really super strong within you. And it's something that I would encourage you to explore a little bit. Like if you get some intro to classes or intro to books on any kind of healing, just find the flavor that works for you. But, we're talking like miracle level healing, like healing the blind and stuff like that. You have that capacity within you. And it's something that can be nurtured and trained. You don't need to go and take like gazillions of classes and spend tons of money. Just get the basics and work with what you feel comfortable with. And also when you're in places like in spiritual camps, I think you also have a pretty good idea of, who is working well and who's using hamburger helper. I think that's also something that you can do quite well. But it's really, if I had to say one thing about you, it's healer. And if you don't mind, you could pass me at some point your contact info, because I would like to talk to you further about that.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. I'd love to.
Okay, so who is Sarah?
Sarah. I have a neighbor named Sarah.
Okay. No, I'm thinking somebody in spirit. I've got this woman in her 20s. She's blonde. She says the name I got was Sarah. So kind of curly hair, petite. Does that ring any bells for you?
It doesn't, but that doesn't mean I'm not thinking of it at the moment.
Okay, no problem. Anyway, that was the main thing I wanted to talk to you about. But it's really, you're here to, I suspect you're a perfectionist, and you can make yourself really quite crazy with trying to be perfect. And, you need to learn to say, okay, that's good enough, and move on. And
my 17-year-old is about breaking her neck, shaking her head. Yeah. It's just put your hands on people, and you'd be quite startled at what's possible for you, and it just comes through you. Yeah. Do you do any kind of regular kind of spiritual practice? I love meditation.
Okay.
I'm a Reiki master.
Oh, cool.
There you go.
And I volunteer for hospice.
Interesting.
And what's interesting about that is when I took the class, I said I want to do anything except, I don't want to be bedside when they pass.
Mm-hmm.
And fast forward 2 years, that's exactly what I do.
Yeah, and they probably ask for you.
I'll, massage their feet, their hands, whatever. But I have been bedside many times, and I enjoy it. Not enjoy their passing, but I don't mind helping their families and helping them, and making it a peaceful experience.
Mm-hmm. So, I'm just going back to Sarah. And I think what's going on with Sarah, I think she's a joy guide of yours. And I think at times, if you didn't have grandkids there with you, at times you need to be reminded to lighten up and have fun. But I think your grandkids probably have that well in hand.
Yeah, they do.
So the peaceful transition, you couldn't be in a better place with your gifts. But I ask you just to be more aware of them and work with them more. So that's, the more you do it, the better you get. That's true of almost anything. So anyway, I will stop here for the moment.
Thank you.
Michelle, we're going to go back and ask, what is your second question that you have on your mind this evening?
There's a new show called Child Psychic. Or any of the shows really that are on, do you find that those are a help or hindrance to the perception?
Melody, I'm going to let you answer that first because I'm at a loss for that one.
Well, I used to watch, it was a couple years ago though. I haven't seen any in a couple years. And I liked what they were doing with the kids, and it amazed me what the kids were able to do. They were awesome. If it was on the level, they were really awesome. But Malcolm's got something. Yes.
Did you?
Oh, okay.
Melody,
sorry, you're passing to me?
Oh, hold up, Malcolm. Melody, did you find that the shows were helpful, not so helpful? Were they?
Okay, well, I was actually mentoring a young man at that time, and they are the ones that told me about it. I didn't even know about it. I don't watch a lot of TV except for the shows my husband and I record and watch, and that's it. Don't watch news and stuff like that. But when I watched it again, yes, I did think they were helpful, and it was just very interesting that when given free reign, they just soared with what they did. Again, if it's on the level, they did incredible, and it was really neat. And for the most part, it helped the kids solidify what they were doing and have faith and belief in themselves more solidly, and to be doing it with other kids like that, because there was 5 kids sometimes, maybe teenagers. They were teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I thought it was pretty awesome.
Malcolm, have you found much the same thing in shows? And my curiosity, are there differences in shows here between the States and Canada?
We don't really, there's really nothing like that on at all around me right now. It's been a while. I remember the one that I think Melody was talking about, where they had several kids and then they were doing different things with them. And no, I thought that was pretty good because it's demystifying it a lot. And just as long as they don't get too dramatic with it, because sometimes they tend to get a little bit sensationalistic. But the more that you can expose people to it and let people know that it's okay, it's real, it works, and people can feel more comfortable with it.
Chip Coffey is the one that was on that show, the psychic there.
Psychic Kids.
Is that what it was?
Yeah. I remember reading about that in particular show with Chip Coffey, and he's worked with a lot of kids.
Yes.
And he is a very respected member of a community, if you will.
Right.
So I would trust him in what he's doing and things that are going on. I personally, I've never been able to take the time to sit and watch a lot of television. So I really can't tell you, Michelle, from my aspect, whether it's good or bad. Listening to Melody and Malcolm, I would say, as long as it doesn't seem like flim-flam, and as long as it is not dealing in things that younger children really should not be associating with, it would be a good thing, because any education is a good education. Again, folks, as long as it's not a horrible kind of thing. We don't want to be teaching our kids to walk on the dark side at all, ever.
Right. No, just the opposite. We teach them not to. No dabbling with the dark.
Exactly.
No dabbling.
What was your third question that you had on your mind, Michelle?
Just in general, do gifts come and go throughout your life? Are they, in my 20s, I could do this, that, but actually in my 40s, I'm more stronger at this.
Well, that's a good question.
Do they change or do they come and go?
Malcolm, I'm going to let you answer that one first this time.
Well, I've been at this a really long time, and I'm curious by nature, so I've delved into all kinds of things. But I find that I let stuff slide. I just don't use it as much. Every once in a blue moon, something comes up. There's a request. Somebody wants something specific. But generally, I think it's the gift is always there. It's like what changes is how you express it. As we mature, we get more detail, more defined, more depth.
Okay.
Melody?
I think that as we go along, we find the ones that we like the best. So where we haven't done like palm reading since '82, it's kind of in the background, and then it would be more from feeling, because while you might let one thing go or not practice it as much, while you've practiced something else, you might do that same thing in a different manner. Does that make sense? But I feel like you just get your specialties and you kind of focus on them, but it doesn't mean you necessarily lost the other. It just might not be as upfront.
In that, I would honestly agree, and I'm much in the same boat with everybody. What we do is like exercising any other muscle in the body. If we exercise that muscle a lot, it does become much stronger, to where if we do not, it languishes or it becomes more like atrophy, to where the muscle just doesn't want to do anything. So it's not a stronger gift. The other thing that I have found in working with a lot of people is that there are certain gifts that may not appear until it's kind of like going through school. If your understanding of things isn't enlarged or where it should be, having a gift that needs a lot of experience in life, if you don't have that experience and you suddenly wind up with this kind of a gift, it may throw you off, it may turn you off, it may cause problems. You're seeing things that you didn't know, you didn't think about. Some people don't really understand what they're doing until an older age, 30s, 40s, 50s, and they get hit with all the gifts all at once. And like Melody said, we pick and choose the stronger traits of what we are comfortable with. Just like Lisa Fry. Lisa Fry, it just all of a sudden all of her gifts emerged very later in life. So it for her was, I'm sure, hellacious at times, because she didn't really, it took time to understand or to develop or come to fruition. Interesting question, though, because if people, and I've never run across any, but if somebody were to utilize every aspect of every gift, they would be such a multi-talented person. People, I would almost assume people would not believe what they say because they're too accurate. Does that make sense? You know, we've run across people like that.
Yeah.
And
I think like Melody was saying that you tend to do what you like.
Yeah.
Which in turn would mean you're doing what you're good at because it's what you do the most.
Right. And also there's, the old saying of when the student is ready, the teacher shows up or the master shows up.
Yep. Very, very true in life. From our YouTube chat room, Pat Beers is in YouTube. She's watching on our YouTube channel. Just real quick, she said Chip Coffee has a new show with kids and includes parents who don't always understand what's happening.
Oh, wow. That's good.
So that from Pat, kind of adding in what's going on.
Yes.
I'm glad Pat said that, again, because I don't watch anything. All right, folks, we're halfway through our show, believe it or not. Time flies by so quickly. We're going to take just a few minutes worth of an interlude, stretch a little bit, and we'll be right back in about 2 or 3 minutes. Coming back from our interlude this evening, our special guest is Michelle, and we're taking the time to read for her because we all like to continue doing what we do, and our panel members enjoy that just as much as anything else. And we love reading for people in public, in person, in private, all over the place. And that's one thing that we wanted to incorporate in our show, which is we started doing. Now, Michelle, you had gone through, I think, your first 3 questions, if I'm not mistaken. So if you would, tell me what the next question you have on your list is.
The next question I have is, can you explain how psychics and mediums and gifted people are incorporating art into their practices?
Oh, that's a really good question. Malcolm? I'm going to put you on deck to answer that first.
Myself, I sculpt. I see things in 3D. I've tried all kinds of art through the years, and what really came out was working in 3D. And I do life-size busts, people, different things, but there sometimes is just an image that wants to emerge, and it's very strong, and it wants to get created. I haven't sculpted for a while. But because we get a lot more vision, a lot more imagery than the average person, and sometimes it's absolutely fabulous to be able to put the actual image out there rather than my verbal description of it.
Melody, you have an absolute wonderful way of doing that.
And it is incredible. And it is like spiritual art. And Michelle, I do it with, I've done a lot of stuff. Okay. The first time I ever found out I could do any kind of art, I was at one of the intensives where I met Malcolm and Michael. And I wanted to hear the speaker, but I was so sleepy. I wanted to go take a nap, which is one of my favorite things. And I had this great big notebook, so I just started drawing. I just started drawing squiggly lines. And I wound up with 2 wonderful pictures. The first one, I didn't know what it was. Second one, I knew was going to be Taurus. So the first one wound up being Aries. And I told my Buzz Myers at the time, I said, look what I did. Look what I did. He says, look what you channeled. It's like, what? Channeled? And I made a calendar out of it in 2006 of all the astrological signs, and with each element, 6 elements to that particular sign. And anyway, that was really cool. But since then, and I always doodle, but tell me to sit down and draw. I do not do creative on demand. Cannot do it. It's crappy. It's terrible. But now I use soft pastels, and I just go with the flow. And you start with something like you do the whole background, and you look for pictures or faces or something, and you just go with what you feel to do next. And it's incredible. And it's incredible.
I was going to say, because I know that some of the paintings that you have done have been just absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Well, I've done the entire medicine wheel too. After seeing Nancy that week, I went and pulled out the pictures of the medicine wheel, which I actually have them all right here. But the 36 stone wheel. But that was more directed, and I copied things more than spiritual. But the spirit art is pretty awesome.
That's kind of, I like how some of that really comes together too, because Nancy showed how you had taken various stones and painted for her personal medicine wheel.
Yeah.
And those are beautiful.
Thank you.
I'm not anywhere near as creative as either of them. I can work in wood. I can do woodworking, but that's more of a hobby. But for me, the only thing that I can really do is I will take notes and write things down. And after a period of time, 5, 7, 8 years, compile it all and write a book and put a book out. Other times it's doing guided meditation recordings for people and things like that. But to say for me to be able to channel my gift in other ways, I would be at a loss. Massively. I would massively be at a loss.
Well, again, creative on demand, I cannot do.
No, I'm not good at that. I'll balk and look like a first grader standing on a stage, at the Christmas play. Just Michelle, if you would, tell me what your next question that you had was.
The last question I had was, do you think people that discover their gifts, for instance, as a child, have stronger gifts than a person that doesn't discover them until later in life? Because they've had their whole life to experience the gift.
Melody, how would you answer that?
I was later in life for sure. I think I was 32 before I even realized there was something really cool to check out. And then I just simply had to trust. But I have a granddaughter who's been since birth probably incredibly gifted. But she was so gifted, Michelle, that it was uncomfortable. She would see way too much stuff, way beyond what I even realized she saw.
Mm-hmm.
And I've only in the last few years, and she's 23 now, understood what she used to see. And so, for her, it just took time. And me talking to her and telling her that, honey, you can tell them to go away, that you cannot help them or something like that. And because she just was always harassed, kind of. It was not good for her. But now she is I think she's very well adjusted. She's, she has some spooky stuff sometimes, but she is better at understanding it now and dealing with it and using it. And so she does.
I was going to ask, does she use it?
Yes, she does. She does use it for a tool now. Mm-hmm. In her daily life, she does. But it was rough. But Malcolm or Michael might actually be better since birth or childhood.
I'm going to let Malcolm answer that because he's worked with a lot of kids over a period of time. Malcolm?
Well, I started early. I was having all kinds of things happening to me, and as a young kid. But when I was 15 is when things really started to take off, and I got involved. No, I think it's. I think as kids, they can develop differently because you have a whole lot less conditioning or concepts in their mind to change. It's. But I think when you wake up is when you wake up. There's some people I've met, some near-death experience people who woke up in a really dramatic way. And, they're just as good as anybody that's been doing it forever. I think it's just a question of the experience. I think the actual connection is when you can connect. But it saves a lot of time doing it as a kid, I think.
Yeah.
But your daughter actually is a natural born psychic medium. She's really got the gift for that. And it's a question of, it takes work. It's like learning to play an instrument. You go to classes, you read books, you practice, you work on it, you get better at your craft. And it takes time. So I used to tell people coming in for psychic development classes, somebody actually said to me, "Don't tell them that." I said, "Yeah, it takes a good 3 to 5 years to become a good performing medium. You can get up, do it all, get up on stage, work one-to-one, phone, all that stuff. It takes time to learn the techniques, and your daughter definitely has a gift, so it's really worth following up. I don't know if there's any spiritualist churches around where you are. That's usually where you can get about the best psychic training or mediumship training. But encourage her.
I do encourage her very often.
Mm-hmm. Now, it's natural for her, and the shadow side of what she has, like she has the incredible creativity, but it's the shadow side of that is insecurity. So she probably has to deal with quite a bit of that.
You are good.
Thank you.
Good. Well, and I think personally, that she's kind of been in Mariah's shadow, even though Mariah's the younger one.
Mm-hmm.
Just personality-wise, Mariah's gifts were more obvious.
Yeah.
I think she didn't want to ride on Mariah's coattail, which she's not, because they're two completely different entities. I mean, they're completely different. Their gifts are different.
Yes. No, absolutely. They're both gifted, but they are very different. And Mariah's the in-your-face type of girl. And that's true.
My interesting thing kind of leads right into my last question, which might be a little heavy, but I'll ask it anyway.
Sure.
Mariah's parents are both addicts. Mariah was diagnosed with fetal alcohol syndrome, and it has been suggested to me more than once to test her for autism. Mariah's an extremely bright child that gets straight A's. I don't believe she has fetal alcohol syndrome or autism. I think she is blunt. She is her own leader. She's not going to follow anybody in anything.
Mm-mm.
And I think her gifts are what people were seeing, and they think they wanted to label it. They wanted to put a diagnosis on it.
Right.
And she doesn't need one. But how often do you see that where gifted children come out of disasters? Because Mariah has been gifted since birth.
Malcolm?
That's a hard one because no, it does happen through strength through adversity, and people can really draw on their inner gifts, their inner guidance, their inner knowing, because the outside world is just too chaotic for them. That's about really all I can tell you about that.
I always just wondered if there was a connection, if these children do come out of, they kind of rise out of the ashes type of thing. Now, Mariah's lived with me since she was 9 months old, so she didn't live in the situation, but she still had to deal with it.
Yeah. It's, well, one thing with Mariah, she has such an incredible strong will. I doubt very much that she's going to have any substance problems in her life. But no, sometimes it does come through adversity. Some people have had very difficult lives, and it tends to make them stronger spiritually. But that's kind of a make or break kind of situation. But it does happen. I've seen it.
Melody, what do you think?
I think she should be more tested for her gifts than and she's the one with her birthday with her first name, and she's already an Aries, holy moly. Talk about stubborn. And then your daughter, she's so different. I mean, they're not even close. There should be no competition, truly, because their numbers are so different. And they just have different gifts, so that there shouldn't be comparison or competition, or that they feel that way at all, because they have their own special gifts. And Destiny, I would feel she might be more interested in art or creating or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and one thing I would really make sure you find a way for them to make sure they protect themselves. And like Malcolm said about, was this my feeling or is it somebody else's? Because when they know themselves really well, they'll know that they're not getting crap from somebody else, and they'll know when somebody else has butt in or too close or, trying to manipulate or anything. When they know themselves really good, they'll know it's like, whoa, that doesn't feel like me. And sometimes they may question and even say, is this mine or is it somebody else's? And if it's somebody else's, go away. And you'll be surprised. I mean, I've had to do that myself with not realizing this is not mine until I'm like, why am I feeling this way? I shouldn't be feeling this way. And then it's like, okay, got it. And then you do the thing. But sometimes, I mean, white light of Christ or just anything surrounded in a white protective egg or bubble kind of thing. But something, what would you suggest, Malcolm?
Well, one thing I would really, that hasn't been talked about is, I call it office hours. You don't want to be open 24/7 to whatever's going on, because it gets to be overwhelming. It's like listening to, 3 radios very loud at the same time. So, find a space to say, okay, for Tuesday night at 7:30, we're doing this. And, sort of put some limits on it so you're not getting disturbed in your sleep and getting weird dreams and picking up all the randomness. It takes a while to get grounded in this and get focused. I mean, that's really what the experience is about. So you don't get distracted and you keep your mission in mind. But both girls are really here for, actually, and yourself as well, Michelle, are really here to do things. Mariah's really here for service to others. And Destiny's here to inspire people. Very different vibe to that. And Michelle, you're really here to help and heal. And I think you've landed in probably about the best spot that you could be, with the work that you do. So I'm going to just leave it at that.
Thank you.
I've got a little bit of a different kind of something to think about, because I've been sitting and I've listened, and I agree with both Malcolm and Melody when you're talking about children coming out of adversity like that. Even though we, in the womb or just born or very, very young, we may not understand vocabulary that is around us. We may not understand physical surroundings as we know them as adults. But I guarantee you, we all feel and remember all the emotion that happened since basically right before we were born. We know, you start if somebody is pregnant and they start acting out and doing all kinds of crazy things, the baby has rough time. They'll start kicking, punching. Hey, this is uncomfortable. Don't do that. And when they're first born, they're crying. Somebody picks them up and they speak soothingly, and it's the warmth and the love that makes them relax and not cry. So is it a stronger, different person because of adversity? Sometimes I would say yes. As children grow, they take that adversity from what they feel in a memory. They can't put words to it, but they feel it. And they will have a stronger imagination, which helps people grow as a reader, as a medium, because then we don't become stagnant, and we're not afraid of things that we see because our imagination has already just run rampant. So when we see a loved one at a young age, we're like, oh, hey, how are you? And there's no fear of saying, oh my God, Aunt Susie's over there standing in the corner. What am I going to do? We run and embrace them and say, how are you? To say that they have any kind of an issue because of how their parents were to that, I would say no. I truly don't believe so. When people are saying, for kids anymore, it is a normal buzzword now that you have autism, ADD, God knows what. They are approving garbage medication for children now at the age of 3. Why do you want a kid at the age of 3 on Adderall or anything like that? It's horrible.
Yeah.
So it's let the child develop. When we were young, honestly, when we were young, there was no thing as ADD. I understand there are clinical cases of it, but it's because we didn't take the time to stop and pay attention. Our head was in the clouds, or we didn't want to do our homework, or we were just walking around, and yet our head was nowhere near our body. So it was difficult to pay attention. Things change over time. But do they have a problem? Absolutely not. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. But often children... Oops, sorry.
Go ahead.
Often children who go through a lot of adversity really understand life a lot better. And they develop wisdom a whole lot earlier than most.
And they'll be the ones that somebody talks to them like they're 50 years old, like they can relate to their old soul kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
They seem so wise for their age that people start talking to them, tell them their life story or something. And that's really...
It does. It becomes an incredible thing. We're going to get ready and wrap up. I'm going to ask everybody to, if you would... I'll start with you, Melody. If you would, what closing kinds of thoughts or words would you have for Michelle this evening?
When we were talking about, or when Malcolm was talking about the boundaries and the time off and stuff like that, when I tell people what I do, they're like, "Oh my God, you can read my mind." It's like, I'm like a TV. It's turned off, connected to the power all the time, but it's turned off. And I don't need to turn it on. I don't want to know your problems and stuff. It's turned off. But also Lisa Williams, when she was finished with her reading or her time to help people, she put her hat on, she put her hat on when it was over, and then she went home. But like there was a specific time, like, this is it, we're done. And so it's about finding that comfort level or place that is your boundary time, or where your own time, and not open for all kinds of everything. You got to have time off too. Okay, and hopefully I said that right.
Yeah, it came out just right. Malcolm?
Yeah, I agree. It's part of your development to learn to control things, and I'm completely with Melody on this one. I mean, I don't walk around open. I mean, if somebody wants to ask me something, then boom, it's there. Right. Or I do my opening or whatever. But I mean, it's creating balance and creating boundaries, so you're not getting distracted or whatever. I mean, there's so much stuff out there.
Yeah.
Yes, so much stuff. So it's the kids now have access to anything. And what I really find fascinating is when you look into the eyes of some of these kids, it's just like, whoa, they're so evolved. I mean, they're arriving here starting where we worked years to get to. And this is where they start. So, I mean, some of the gifted people that are arriving just really amaze me sometimes.
Yeah.
Fantastic. On my end, Michelle, kind of since I grew up with this, and again, you didn't talk about it in our house. And I tried to open my own kids up and say, look, when you talk with the grandkids, even with your kids, ask them if they had a piece of information suddenly come to them, if they knew something. Number one, would they actually tell the person? Number two, how would they tell the person? And ask them then, what do they believe the outcome would be? And it's not so much to test them about anything. It's at that point you're able to interject little pieces of morality, little pieces of everybody has, like they said, everybody has boundaries. Some people would be scared to death if somebody ran up to them and go, "Oh my God, I saw this about you and your husband, and I got to tell you right now." We try not to. It's not to say that you should not. That's a morality thing. But the more that they can hear the positive things that you are saying, the more they'll actually grow. Not only as a metaphysical person, but as just a normal, everyday, well-balanced individual. Does that make sense?
Perfect sense, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Well, folks,
Well,
believe it.
thank you, everyone. It's been wonderful.
Oh, we seriously enjoy having you here this evening. This is the hardest part. Time just flies right on by before you know it.
It flies, yeah.
It does. Time goes by very quickly. For everybody that has been watching or been listening, this has been Michelle. She's been our guest this evening while we kind of find answers and help her through some of the things that she's been asking. You can watch all the videos either on our Facebook page or you can look at our YouTube page at Terra Turas. You can also look online at www.terraturas.com. You can even listen to former podcasts of our shows through your favorite podcasts, either iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, any of the major things. Just look for Terra Turas, and we'll be on there. And accordingly, we will be back again next week with another show. Next week will be a little bit of an odd show, but it's going to be a good one. So for everybody that's been here, thank you for joining. And we will see everybody again next week, Wednesday night, 9 p.m. Have a great night, everybody.
Good night, Michelle.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.